Hello and an exceptionally warm welcome back to the channel. There's a little bit of sun up in the loft, though it's not really very warm, but quite nice conditions for a bit of fun on the vintage Triang Super 4 base railway. Right from the off, take a look at this Speed Merchant. This is a lovely example of the Triang diesel shunter R.55. I did a video on this ages ago. Can I get scale running speeds from this Triang model? Well, I did in the end, but it might be going a little bit faster than its 25 miles an hour at the moment, but it's enjoying itself pulling these utility coaches. I've got this on the layout for a reason. This has one of my prototype modified XO4 motors with a bull race bearing. It's only got one bearing that's been bull raced, the back one, but we're going to come back to doing a bit of work on these motors. Now, coming through the station, quite unusual for my layout. We've got what looks like a dock shunter, but it isn't. It's still Steve's motor bogie. I haven't sent it back yet. I'm running it in, so it's the X317 high mech bogie, but I've shoved a dock shunter body shell on it just with a little bit of blue tack. It's sitting a bit high, but it looks a bit better than just running the bogie around with no body on. And look what it's got behind it. It's just bringing into position some Transcontinental coaches, because I've got a visitor to the railway today from abroad, and these are the coaches it's going to pull. But right now, let's get back to this little diesel shunter. Triang's depiction of possibly a sort of 08 type shunter, and it looks good in that green. I'm just going to let these run round a bit because I've got some stuff going on the workbench, so let's take a look. So I'm sorry, it's just going to pan around. Okay, now let's have a look at everything I've got on here. Been using this lovely powered wheel cleaning brush, and to pull those Transcontinental coaches, look at this. This is a really nice R.55. Now, I've just got around to this. I was given this by David Atkins when he came to visit towards the end of last year, and as I had a bit of spare time the other day, I thought it's time to get it going. Now, I've done the minimum possible to it. You might hear it's got a little high spot on one of the gear wheels, but that'll iron out. But look at that, that's a beautiful mid 1960s bogie, and it's running absolutely fantastically. I have replaced all the wiring, but even the bulb works. Now, there was no wires to the bulb, but the bulb was there, so a little bit of wiring, and we've got a light at the front. So I've cleaned it up a bit, and that's what's going to be pulling those Transcontinental coaches. So I'm really grateful for this, David. It's a beautiful item. Look at this. Let's take a look at this body shell. I mean, there's a few bits missing, some of the portholes, but it's got the two lovely metal horns on the top, and it's well used. Now, I've repaired around the body mounting holes because they'd both been cracked, because one of the screws was a little bit too big. In fact, it must be down here somewhere. Let's have a look. There's a correct screw, and you can see that one's too big. The transfers are missing from the front, but I'm sure that's something I can get to at some point. It did have a sizable crack from the headlight down, but I've glued that up. So it's going to look great pulling those coaches. And look how well it's survived, really. This has been played with. It looks like the driver's had a lucky escape there. Something's hit the windscreen, but it didn't go through, so he'll have to make do with that today. But yeah, I can't wait to get this on the track in a minute. Now, let me just put the body shell down, because David also gave me this interesting item which I thought I'd share with you. It's a piece of standard track, but what's interesting about this especially for the UK, is if you look there, made in New Zealand and Australia. So this is Australian standard track or New Zealand standard track. It has suffered from considerable shrinkage. You can see it's gone a funny shape, but it's a lovely thing to have in the collection, or just put in a cabinet alongside a piece of UK made track. So I'm very grateful for these two items, and I'm especially looking forward to running this in a minute. Now this is a bit noisy, so let's just turn it up to see that headlight glow. Right, I'm turning it down. We'll come back to that in a minute. So what else is on the bench? Here's the little, that is the dock shunter that's running around the layout. The correct chassis, I'll just put that there. And then I was talking about modifications again. So I've just found this really nice motor bogie. You might recognise it. It's an X337 motor bogie, class 37 or the class 31, but it has these problematic bearings that crack and collapse, allowing the armature to jiggle about all over the place. Well, this bogie was just something I picked up at a train show. It had been on fire or melted. The armature is actually okay, but if we just take the pickups off, you'll notice that there's been some sort of heat build up here and quite considerable melting from the pickup area, but I can restore this. Now, just before I tell you what I'm going to do with it, I think it was mentioned to me by somebody who watches the videos that it's always a good idea to be careful, because these motors, I mean, sometimes we call them toy train motors, but they are a DC motor, and if they're overloaded or running correctly, they can generate quite a lot of heat. So enough to cause a burn, or to even maybe melt plastic, or possibly in the worst case scenario a fire. So that's why we shouldn't really leave them unattended. And if you're doing modifications, it is always a good idea just to see if things are running at a nice temperature or if they're getting a bit too hot. But okay, I think that's enough of dire warnings, but this is all about fun now. So what am I going to do with this? Well, let's have a look what I've got. Now, these are the sort of bearings that I've been using in my modifications of the XO4 motor, XO3, and we are going to come back to that because I'm going to design a front bearing holder. So I just get these. You can see they've got a name on there. Slot car racing, people like to soup up their slot cars, so bearings, ball bearings are good, and we can get these to fit our armature shaft. So how's it going to work? How am I going to actually modify this? Well, let me just slip the armature out. It's going to be a question of line boring. No, I just don't want to lose those screws. So on my lathe I shall mount this, and then coming in from this end, sorry, not that end, this end where I've got access to the bearing, you can see the two claws. If I look down from there, you can perhaps see those two claws. Well, the center line for the bearing is directly in the middle of those two claws going horizontally. So I'm going to set up a bore, and I'm just going to bore out the chassis to take those ball bearings. Now I'm then going to widen the slots here so the actual bearings will just push down. So when the armature is correctly assembled, the bearings are a really tight fit on the armature, so there's going to be no problem with end float. But once the bearings are down, I shall make a plastic retainer to fit underneath the traction magnet to hold them in nice and firm. Now, I'm not going to do this like I did the armature rewind video. I'm not going to make endless videos on this, but this will be going on in the background, and when I've got something to show, we'll come back to it. Now, just before we put this Lovely R.55 on the layout. Let's check if everything's still going. I have turned my back on the layout, but no strange noises. So here comes our little hybrid dock shunter. Doesn't like that diamond crossing the wheel spacing, but it's running beautifully. So I'm going to be posting this back to Steve after the weekend, because I'm pretty sure it's run in and it's just happy to go for minutes and minutes, or even an hour or so, I think. Now look at this. I do love this Triang diesel shunter. It's a superb item. Now that's still got the original gearing, still got an original 3-pole motor. It's just got one of those ball racers I showed you next to the magnet at the back of the motor. So let's just watch it creep around the layout. And you've got to remember we're looking at a DC vintage layout here, but that's some respectable slower speed running. And there's some big gaps on these Triang Super 4 diamonds. So let's just see. It just stutters a little bit there, doesn't it? But only on the first one. So maybe that diamond requires a clean. Okay, well, I think we're going to leave the diesel shunter running, but what I need to do now is get that little dock shunter into the station. So let's just put a bit more power on, bring it round. Right. Well, that's absolutely in the correct place. I'm going to leave that diesel shunter running round. So, there's Steve's bogie with its little dock shunter top. I don't know whether I can ease the top off. I think the blue tack's probably got a bit warm. But it doesn't look too bad, does it? Let me just see if I can... whoops. Yes, here it is. You've got to remember the coupling is actually on the body shell. So let's just... There we go. So it's just a bit of blue tack in there to hold it on, but there's the power bogie. And it's done a great job bringing these coaches round. So I'm just going to get that R.55 reassembled. And we'll be back in a minute to have a little bit of running from that wonderful Transcontinental 1950s loco. Well, here it is. This excellent example of mid-1950s Triang engineering is hooked up to these much later Triang Transcontinental coaches. They're fitted with a finer flange wheel suitable for System 6 running or Code 100, but this older item's going to pull it. Now let's just wait for the diesel shunter to get out the way. Very quiet with one ball race fitted. I wonder what it'll be like when I get around to designing a front bearing. Okay, well, can I move this away in a suitable scale way? So I'm going to put some power on, not too much. And she's rolling nicely. A little bit of squeaking here and there. Didn't spend as much time as I could probably recommissioning those coaches. Perhaps a bit too eager to have fun on the railway, but let's see what happens. I'm going to leave it at this speed because I want to see how it copes with the diamond crossing on the upward main line. So it's just coming through the big station. I wonder if there'll be a glimmer from the headlight at this speed. Just coming round this corner. A little glimmer. Now, will it make it over this Super 4 diamond? Well, not too bad. I think that shows that the pickups are okay. Right, let's see what this motor bogie can do. Wow, there's some speed available here, isn't there? But there's a speed limit through the big station I've been informed of, so back down to a reasonable speed. You can see why it was great fun getting these back in the day, because you just wanted to drive your train quite fast sometimes, I would imagine, when you got it and you were young, and speed is available. But look at that, 1950s coupled with something from probably the late 1960s, early 1970s, but still going well together. No, I really love this item, so I was so pleased to get it from David, and now I've actually had time to fettle it a little bit and get it up and running. I can see I'm going to be using it quite a bit on the layout, though I might treat it to some transfers just to decorate that front end under the headlight. But apart from that, I think I'm going to leave it original, though there are some little sort of perspex or glass or pieces that are designed to go in the porthole windows on the side, and 3 of them are missing, so I might have a go at making those, see if I could make something just to pop in, just to finish off the body. Well, right now we're going to settle in for a bit of slower running. I hope you've enjoyed the items on display today, and a quick look at some of the things that might be going on the bench. The weather might be warming up, so I think it's time to get back on with some refinishing soon. So I need to finish my spray booth, so that's one item that I need to get back to. And I need to arrange some ventilation, because I'm going to be doing the spraying in my little clock repairing workshop, and I toyed with the idea of hanging a vent pipe out of the window, but I think I might just drill a hole through the wall. So I might show you how I go about that, probably on a day when Mrs. Snooze is out of the house. No, this is certainly bedded in now and is just running very smoothly. And apart from gentle lubrication, all these Triang motors need occasionally is a little bit of maintenance to the commutator, and after considerable running, maybe some brush replacement. But look at that, I'm pleased the headlight bulb is functional. When I got the Loco, there was no wiring to the bulb. I thought it was probably going to be dead, but I carefully just took a little while to clean the wires, the ends of the bulb leads. I've had them just break off at the glass bulb before, but these didn't seem to have been manipulated too much, and I was really thrilled when a little bit of voltage showed that the filament was intact. It could even be an original bulb. Well, I'm going to leave you with these 2 Locos running around the layout. So until the next video, I'll say goodbye.